Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at something that is absolutely going to change how you interact with the acoustic world around you. Now, we usually think of sound as a thing, right? Like a static object, a recorded file on your computer, or just a note on a page. But what if we started treating sound as an unfolding behavior? Imagine an ecosystem where sounds actively interact, pull, push, and evolve together. Well, that's exactly what we're exploring today by unpacking an incredible piece of research by Francesco Accola on this really fascinating concept known as sonic gravity.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to ask yourself a very foundational question. Do you hear sound as a fixed object or as a living behavior? Think about it for a sec. When you hit a key on a piano, do you just hear that one isolated event happening in a vacuum, or do you hear a living, breathing entity that reacts to its environment and leaves a lingering trace? This is a massive paradigm shift in how we understand audio, especially when we start mixing traditional acoustic instruments with responsive, live electronics.
Traditionally, we treat sound as an object. We box it in as isolated events, fixed structures, or just static notes. But modern electroacoustic design shifts us entirely to a whole new paradigm, sound as a relational field. Here we're talking about movement, interaction, and a living ecology. The sounds aren't just sitting there passively. They are constantly communicating and influencing each other in real time, kind of like a giant acoustic puzzle.
So, here's our roadmap for unraveling this mystery today. We'll start with sound as behavior, then break down the sonic gravity framework, explore real-world sonic behaviors and the human-machine dialogue, and finally, look at finding coherence in complexity.
Section 1. Sound is a behavior, a paradigm shift.
To really set the foundation for what exactly happens when human performers and electronic systems share the stage, this quote from the source author, Francesco Accola, hits the nail on the head. He notes, "Contemporary sound design increasingly involves the creation of behaviors, relationships, and evolving sonic processes rather than the organization of isolated musical events." You see, modern hybrid systems completely blur the boundaries between an acoustic instrument and digital processing. It essentially forces us to view sound as an active process created through interactions. You aren't just designing a sound anymore, you're actually designing how that sound behaves out in the wild.
Section 2. The sonic gravity framework, organizing the pull.
So the crucial point is, this isn't some literal law of physics. We aren't talking about acoustic mass dropping to the floor. Think of it more like a siren on a busy street. It inherently commands attention, alters the flow of traffic, and naturally organizes the behavior of everyone around it. Sonic gravity is a conceptual framework operating at the perceptual and design level. It describes how interactions like this between sounds, performers, and technology organize themselves into meaningful behavioral tendencies. Simply put, it's about how sounds pull, push, and anchor our attention as we listen to a complex environment.
Within this framework, there are 5 core forces: attraction, resistance, continuity, stability, and instability. These 5 principles explain how complex electronic and acoustic sounds interact to create a cohesive experience for the listener, rather than just evolving into total random noise.
Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 3, Real-World Sonic Behaviors, the PhonoSphere.
To actually test this framework out, Accola developed a system called the PhonoSphere. This is a hybrid electroacoustic performance project that integrates a live acoustic piano, live electronics, and generative sound design. I want you to think of it as the perfect collaborative ecosystem where a human pianist and a generative computer system actually share agency. They're creating music together in real time, constantly reacting to one another on the fly.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how sonic gravity works in practice. We can map the abstract principles directly to the actual PhonoSphere performance. For the principle of attraction, during an episode called Genesis, the pianist would play a sustained harmony, and the electronics would capture and creatively prolong that resonance. It literally draws the listener's focus and pulls their attention, just like gravity. Then we have resistance and instability. In the Scylla and Cherubis episode, the generative electronic textures actively diverge from the piano's tempo. They absolutely refuse to sync up perfectly. This creates an incredible tension and a feeling of competing forces pushing against one another.
Continuing on, we see continuity and stability. Through a process called granular diffusion, actually think of it like an acoustic vapor trail. Fragments of earlier sounds are allowed to persist across time. This lets past acoustic events remain completely active in the present. And for stability, in an episode called Coral Reef, recurring resonant textures create a perceptual equilibrium. So even when the sound environment is massively complex and constantly evolving, these specific behavioral forces give the listener a real sense of grounding and orientation. You never feel completely lost in the noise.
Section 4. The human-machine dialogue, distributed agency.
Let's introduce the human element to really ground this theory. In this research, the system wasn't just played by its creator. They brought in a second performer, a highly skilled pianist named Isabella Libra, to actually sit down, play, and interact with the PhonoSphere system. Her perspective from inside the performance is absolutely fascinating. After playing, she noted, "I never felt completely in control of the system, but nor was I completely overwhelmed by it. It was a collaboration." This perfectly highlights the reality of what researchers call distributed agency. Control is genuinely shared between human intention and machine emergence. It wasn't just a human triggering a backing track. No, the machine had a mind of its own, generating behaviors that the performer had to constantly adapt to.
She expanded on this, saying she felt she was dialoguing, a musical partner with whom to build my performance moment by moment through listening and reciprocity. It's honestly a bit like playing a duet with a brilliant but maybe slightly stubborn partner. By treating the machine as an active collaborator rather than a passive tool, the whole performance fundamentally changes into a living, breathing conversation. She had to actively listen to what the electronics were doing and adjust her piano playing accordingly, constantly leaning into the sonic gravity of the moment.
Section 5. Finding coherence in complexity, the listener's ear.
So we know what the composer intended, and we know what the performer felt on stage. But what is the audience actually experiencing? Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is the audience data collected right after the performance. Did this complex behavioral design actually translate into a meaningful experience? Well, when asked how the music felt over time, 11 out of 13 people surveyed selected moving between states. Only one said settling and one said drifting/changing. So the audience overwhelmingly heard the performance exactly as it was intended to be heard, not as static songs or disconnected noises, but as an evolving behavior continuously transforming right in front of them.
Furthermore, 12 out of 13 respondents perceived clear relationships between the sonic elements. They were using words like enveloping and noting an emotionally engaging coherence. Think about that for a second. Despite the system's massive generative complexity, with algorithms and acoustic reverberations flying around in real time, the audience didn't just hear chaos. They found organization, balance, and profound emotional depth. This powerfully proves that the sonic gravity framework truly works at the listener level.
So, let's wrap up with why this all matters for the future of interactive technology and sound design. This research shifts our focus from designing static sounds to designing dynamic interactions. It transforms technological interfaces from mere tools into collaborative partners with distributed agency. It proves that complexity doesn't have to mean perceptual fragmentation. Listeners can handle and even deeply enjoy dense emergent systems if they're structured by sonic gravity. Ultimately, this redefines how we design hybrid environments, making them feel so much more like living ecologies.
Which leads us to a final, pretty provocative thought. Next time you step into a complex sonnet environment, whether that's an avant-garde concert, an interactive art installation, or, hey, even just the bustling ecology of a busy city street, ask yourself, what is pulling your focus? What invisible forces of sonic gravity are at play right now? Start listening not just to the sounds themselves, but to the fascinating behaviors and relationships between them. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep your ears open.